There's a process that plays out, that process informs senators as it unfolds, and ultimately it will dictate whether someone gets confirmed or doesn't get confirmed. And so that's a really important consideration. The other thing to keep in mind is that the Constitution, its appointments clause, requires get Senate confirmation of any person that he puts on the federal bench as a federal judge or an officer of the United States, an executive branch official. This is the advise and consent power of the Senate. And the Senate has the ability to exercise this power independently. It doesn't have to confirm the president's nominees. It doesn't even have to defer to those nominees or even give the president a vote on those nominees, because after all, that's the separation of powers. When the Constitution was written, though, there were periods of time where the Senate was gone from Washington, D.C. for months on end, months on end. And so the idea was that the president ought to be able to put someone in a position where you need a government official or a federal judge so that the government can continue functioning until the Senate returns. And so that's called a recess appointment. And these recess appointments aren't designed to do an end run around the Senate's advice and consent power, but rather a supplement to that power to allow the government to continue functioning when the Senate's not in session.
So, but if something doesn't go the president's way, and let's just, for the sake of it, say that he really wants to push somebody forward and the Senate doesn't want it to go forward, is there something that the president can do or the Speaker of the House can do to create some avenue where there could be a recess, a short recess of at least 10 days or more, so that then the president could then push through the person he wants?
No, there's not. And I think we don't have to be experts to see why. I mean, it's just common sense. The separation of powers says that no one is in charge. No one rules America. No one gets to tell each branch, other than the people themselves, how to exercise their powers under the Constitution. The Senate gets to decide for itself how it will exercise its powers, just like the president gets to decide how the president will exercise his powers, and the House their powers. And the Senate has the power to decide when it wants to adjourn. The Constitution is very specific and says it has to get the House's permission if it wants to adjourn for more than 3 days, and to kind of pave the way for a recess of sufficient length to make a recess appointment. But the president can't forcibly adjourn Congress. That would be like the King of Great Britain dissolving Parliament because he doesn't like what the Parliament's about to do. And that is something that is completely antithetical to the Constitution's separation of powers doctrine. And at the end of the day, yes, the president has the power, if the House and Senate disagree on how long to adjourn for, the president can, on extraordinary occasions, in the Constitution, it says extraordinary occasions, adjourn the House and Senate when they can't agree, when they are in a case of disagreement. But that's a very specific term. And the Senate has to take action to decide that it wants to disagree. And until it takes action, then it's not in a state of disagreement with the House.
And so recess appointments happen all the time, right? I mean, they happen under every president. They may push through 100, like Bill Clinton did, about 139, George W., 171, Obama, 32, and so on. But these are appointments that are not high-level cabinets, and are these the ones that, what are those recess appointments for people to understand? Those particular
recess appointments have been used throughout American history for almost every single position, including justices of the Supreme Court. They're in and of themselves, they're not controversial. I think what makes this controversial is when you do an end run, when you use the recess appointment to do an end run around the Senate. One of the reasons why the recess appointments dropped off with President Obama is because President Obama used the recess appointment power to appoint the commissioners to the National Labor Relations Board. I mean, that's an obscure board, the National Labor Relations Board. And the Senate didn't like that. They said we weren't in a recess. And so they started doing what we call pro forma sessions to prevent President Obama from making other recess appointments. And that's where we've been ever since. And so the Senate can decide when and how it wants to limit the president's ability to conduct recess appointments. And again, it's not the recess appointment. It is the reason why. And we all know that the Senate has to confirm just, otherwise the president would have complete and unfettered control of the executive branch, and there'd be no way for the Congress to prevent the president from using the executive branch to encroach on their powers. This is the whole notion of checks and balances.